Okay, so Oven wants to know how to solve cubics. Word of warning. In general, cubics are not solvable by hand in reasonable amounts of time. There is a thing called the cubic formula, which is like the quadratic formula, which I have seen but never used. It's like a page long. I don't really recommend it. Okay, so you can get the exact answers for a cubic. You cannot get the exact answers for anything higher than a cubic using kind of easy techniques. Okay, so here's a cubic. I might notice that my life would be easy if I had 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 6x equals 0. Right? Like this one without the 1, because I could what? Yeah, I could factor an x out, right? And then I could use the zero product rule on the pieces. You guys see that? That would be awesome. Shit. Don't get attached to subtracting the 1 to the other side. That won't do you any good, right? Because then you can factor out the x, but you can't apply the zero product rule anymore. You guys with me? So here's what I would advise. I would advise get out a computer or a calculator and find one of the zeros. You know there's at least one, right? Because this is a cubic. So kind of, in general, the graph looks like this. It might possibly look like this or something. But you know there's 1 0 that's real that you could probably lay your hands on by plotting this and then figuring out where the point where it intersects the x-axis is. You guys cool with that? Failing that, another thing you could try is you could plug in small convenient numbers.
Plug and check.
Yeah, just sort of guess and check. So the guess and check method on this one would be, let's see, x is 0 doesn't work. What's your second most favorite small number? 1. 2 plus 3 minus 6 plus 1 is in fact 0, right? So I just found out that x is 1 is one of the solutions, right? Which means that
X minus 1 is a root.
x minus 1 is not a root, but is...
A 0, a solution, a freaking...
So 1 is a root, a 0, or a solution. X minus 1 is a factor. So that means I could trot out my old school technique where I take x minus 1 and divide it into 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 6x plus 1. You guys remember how to do this thing? Like all at algebra 1? No? Okay, let's spend 2 seconds figuring this out again. So what you do is you ask, what do I multiply by x to get 2x cubed? 2x squared. So you write a 2x squared up here, and then you multiply this back by this thing. So you get a 2x cubed, right, by design, and a what? You get a minus 2x squared, right? And then you do this thing where you subtract all of that jazz, and so you're left with what?
X squared.
So close.
Oh,
5x squared.
5x squared.
You guys see that? Because you're subtracting all of that stuff. So you're subtracting 2x squared and adding, or sorry, subtracting 2x cubed and adding 2x squared. You with me on that? Okay, and then you ask, what do I multiply x by to get 5x squared? 5x. So you put a plus 5x here. Then you multiply back through. So you get a 5x squared, again by design, and a
5x minus 5x.
and a minus 5x, right? And then you need to subtract that crap. And so you get a negative x. And then you ask yourself, what do I multiply by x to get negative x? Negative 1. And then if you multiply this back by that, you'll get minus x plus 1. And then you need to subtract that crap.
So that makes it minus 1 again.
And you should get 0. How do I know I'm going to get remainder 0 here?
Because x minus 1 is a thing that went into it.
Because x minus 1 was a root, so it should divide in there evenly. You guys see that? So really, I just factored this thing like hard way, right? So I know that this turns into x minus 1 times 2x squared plus 5x minus 1, and that's 0, right? So then I can hit this with a 0 product rule. You guys with me? That would get me to either x is 1, which I know about, or this thing is 0. So I'll get x is 1, great, I knew that one was in there. And then I'll get or 2x squared plus 5x minus 1 is 0. And then I have to what?
After that.
Yeah, factor this, complete the square, quadratic formula. I care not at all which method you use. Pick any one of the valid methods to solve the quadratic. Don't do the dumb thing. Like anything that's not one of those methods. But somehow here you get a quadratic formula, right? Cool. Does that sort of help? In general, factoring cubics is really, really hard. Sometimes you get lucky and they're easy. Approximating with a computer is super, super good option if it turns out to be intractable. Cool.